Welcome to the Market Mindset. We are the hub for news, results, and CEO interviews focusing the junior commodities sector. We provide market analysis and perspective that will help position you for solid returns. If that sounds like something you're interested in, you can help support us by liking this video, subscribing to our channel, and clicking the notification bell. For more info, you can visit our website. All links are in the description below. Now let's get into today's video.
Good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. An interesting day here. It's a busy morning over here. Not as busy as our friends over in Davos deciding the fate of the world. But I get into that stuff too much and watching them talk and all that, and it is terrible and awful, to be perfectly honest. So this is in part, we're going to talk about some important things you've been looking at. But it's also just kind of lighten things up a little bit because it's a very tough time. It's very stressful. And I find the more that I start digging into all that type of stuff, the more upset I get. Because no one likes to feel like they have zero control and that they're being managed. And that's kind of what's happening with a lot of media propaganda and whatnot is people are being managed by these so-called elite. And I always stress there's nothing elite about them. They're not that swift. But they just happen to have a lot of power. They have a ton of money, and they have media. I mean, and really, at the end of the day, if you've got the loudest media or influencers around, you will have shape of the narrative. But besides that, there's an interesting narrative you want to talk about.
There is, I thought because we, like you said, we wanted to keep it light, keep it kind of a little bit more fun. So I was scrolling through Wall Street Bets a couple days ago, my favorite subreddit.
Excellent.
Just looking to see if there was anything interesting going on, any ideas. And good old GameStop was back right on the front page.
Well. What do we have here?
I was thinking, all right, what's going on here kind of thing. Well, because I know, there's still a lot of the believers in the GameStop side of things still think it's going to go to the moon eventually. And they're
still a thing. That's great. I didn't know that. Okay. All right.
They still believe. The hardcore believers are there, and all the power to them. I wish them the best.
Now, that guy, who's the guy, the main guy, their main wizard guy. Now, he's smart. He did a lot of analyst.
Roaring Kitty. Yeah.
Roaring Kitty. Is he still a believer, or?
I believe he still holds a position in it. So he's still involved. Now, I know he got tripped up with a lot of stuff where he had to actually testify in the SEC hearings. And we're going to get to the SEC in a second and stuff as well. I'm not sure what kind of came out of that on his side of things, if he maybe stepped back, because I know he's not producing as much content around it anymore.
Yeah, they probably told him, he's been advised to be a bit quiet for the next little while.
Yes, but who is producing some brilliant content with taxpayer dollars? The SEC warning people against the dangers of meme stocks. If we can get this little 30-second clip pulled up here.
I love when the government is trying to help me.
Yes, here we go.
All right, let's see.
This is top quality.
Brad, it's your investment.
I'll take meme stocks. Invest.
Ouch. Your investment, Julie.
I'm going to do some research first.
Well played, Julie. Well played.
You can do research. Investing is not a game. Always do your research.
Oh boy.
An investment decision. Learn more at investor.gov. Before you invest, investor.gov.
So the whole premise of that is just, do your research before you get involved in something that could be dangerous. And I'm not going to, risk my investment on something silly and frivolous, which, I mean, first of all, shows a complete and fundamental disregard for the amount of actual research and I would call sheer genius of the original kind of people who promoted the idea behind GameStop and why it worked to get involved on that, and why the methodology of buying as many shares as they can and holding those shares through all the price fluctuations cost these big hedge funds billions and billions of dollars. That was the point. They did their research. They understood what they were doing. And they succeeded massively on doing it.
Yes, this is a big campaign to make. And listen, I'm all for do your research. We talk about it all the time and whatnot. But it's trying to smear the fact that they were specific on what their goal was and they achieved it. And it's once again, it's an attack on the power of the people. It's on a populism type of thing that, the government's now kind of poo-pooing that that they had failed or that it's just a giant casino. And that was not what any of these were. They started off and they did win. Most people, if they don't go down as far into the research that you would in regards to this, but even that Roaring Kitty guy, I mean, the amount of analysis and work that he did that you can still pull up, it's pretty incredible for a guy who he's not a hedge fund guy. He's not an investment banking guy, is actually really, really interesting. So he did his research. Like he was doing it all day long.
Yeah, he was looking into it and following it extremely closely, and a lot of guys were guys and gals. But that it just shows the kind of, I don't know what the right word here is, but maybe the ignorance of sort of these governing bodies of we're the beacon of it. It reads a lot like a lot of the COVID narrative. Like you need to follow exactly kind of the blueprint
we'll tell
that
you what
we've
to do.
set for you. Exactly. Yeah, we're going to tell you what's best for you, and anything else that you do is putting yourself at risk. We know what's best. Don't worry, sweet little innocent Andrew. You're not going to be able to figure it out on your own. We'll figure it out
you
for
poor stupid peon. You silly, silly, stupid person.
You silly,
that's what it is.
Silly little man.
No, and that's the problem with. I mean, of course, you have to have regulations, and there's government has this role. Obviously, we're not saying that, but the extent to which government now wants to be like fully responsible for everything that you do or say, and even with your investments, it's too much. It's way too much. And now I'll also preface that with there's a lot of scammers out there. There's no end to scams. I mean, we can look at a lot of these cryptos and they're just total, I mean, the entire crypto market to some degree could be a bit of a scam, but there's lots of scams there to be had. It's a big giant pump and dump. And I would reiterate, do your research for sure. But you know what? We're living in a day where the government wants to have a say on literally everything. So much so that you can't even teach your kids something. It has to be a state-sponsored message that has to be indoctrinated. And all of that is very, very bad. And that's that kind of fight that we're going through with people who believe in free speech and freedom and those that don't. And oddly enough, it's the ones that claim that they love the science who don't understand data seem to be carrying the strongest narrative. But overall, despite all that, what else is going on in regards to this kind of sector?
Well, it's interesting because it's still obviously got legs, and like I mentioned earlier, there are still the believers in it. And what I really thought was interesting is this video got published a couple of days ago, and we obviously know YouTube fairly well. It's where we host all of our content. And the next video up in the SEC's playlist directs you to their staff report on equity and options market structure conditions, which is essentially their GameStop report that they published at the end of last year. And it's a 45-page, horribly boring read. So I took the liberty of reading it for everybody.
Thank you.
And it's just, it summarizes the situation in a 45-page report about as well as I could do in a 5-minute YouTube video. But I just find it interesting that they're trying to still build this up that like, oh, you can't be doing stuff like this. This doesn't work. You have to shy away from this. And it's a terrible idea. You're going to lose all your money. And there's poor Gary Gensler, who's had an absolutely horrible time with memes the last couple of days. He's just getting crucified on the internet after this video that they put out. But it's just the overall kind of takeaway from it is I think the Reddit crowd got so fired up and revved up behind it. And I'm gonna actually quote one of these Reddit posts here, and I'm gonna quote the guy, Reddit user Thorbeans, great name. Credit to him. But I'm just going to read one little part of his post here where he says, how many times has the SEC failed to report accurate and timely reports? Do your research is what they're saying in the video. How about you continue to provide accurate information so retail can invest and actually make decisions based on trades and fundamentals? Fundamentals according to who? And this is where we'll get into one of the nice memes that I found. The analyst who gets paid by the hedge funds to place the price target in the right direction. They want the stock to go because there's too many calls on the other side of that number. And that brings me back to my great friend who anyone who's on our message board knows I love to go after Jim Cramer all the time.
He's great.
Poor Jim. So I know we have a meme of Jim there, which will get pulled up at any point here, but that's a great point that he's making is saying, you have to stick to fundamentals. Well, the fundamentals, according to who? The fundamentals that you and I can talk about are vastly different than the fundamentals that Gary here will be talking about, or the fundamentals that a guy like Jim Cramer or these other market commentators might be talking about.
And it's also it's an understanding one's market. Jim Cramer is kind of he's fun. Like, it's a funny show to watch. I wouldn't take any advice from him, but he works at that top end of the market where you have to move a lot of money. So he can't look at sectors that are too small or too venture or too cutting edge, because that's not his thing. He's very much kind of stuck in this market that now, of course, because it's down 60%, he's been rah and cheering things that, obviously were going to hurt. Now, sooner or later, he'll be back up again. Maybe it'll take 6 months, maybe 6 days, maybe 2 years. Who knows? But buy tulips. A lot of these companies, you have to remember, these guys on these shows are essentially promoters on a large scale, whether it's CNBC, Fox, NBC, any of these types of shows. They're promoters, they're op-ed writers, and they are PR people to a large degree, and they're pushing a message, not unlike we would do as influencers for our small little market, to try to convince people that, listen, we think there's huge money and resources. We think if the Davos crowd and these elites, they want to pull off what they want to pull off, it requires an enormous amount of lithium, hydrogen, copper, gold, silver, you name it. It's going to need so much of it. And it's also going to need it matter where it comes from. So our narrative is just a very small one, where we feel very confident. Whereas I would never want to be a Jim Cramer right now, because he's kind of backed into a corner, and he's there to promote a certain message.
And he seems to have, for whatever reason, he's got a bit of a commentator's curse. Like when you're watching a football game and the guy's talking like, oh, he hasn't missed a field goal all year, and then the kicker comes out and shanks a 30-yard chip shot. Yeah. It's the same kind of thing. Everything he seems to talk about, either if he's like, I'm selling this, it turns to gold. And if he says I'm buying this, it turns into an absolute garbage dumpster fire down 40%. So it's, he's got a bit of the kiss of death that way anyways. But you're right. It's just, he's trying to influence and frame a narrative and move sentiment in a certain direction. And that's all that it's important for people to understand, is that's what a lot of commentators on this do. And you have to be weary of what anyone's motivation or intention in the message that they're delivering you for. And that counts for some random guy like Thor Beans on Reddit, or the SEC in the videos they're putting out, or wherever.
And that's why it's so important to get like a wide range. And that's why we don't try to do the doom and gloom too much. There's lots of newsletter writers that focus all on doom and gloom. And I'm amazed every year it's the world's going to end. Everything's crashing. It's all over and it's terrible. And there's truth to all of these messages. And Jim Cramer is there to give a bit of life, to remind people that long-term we're going to be okay. And to focus on that messaging. And I think if people find that middle ground of going, I think in the long run, we're going to be okay. A lot of these, technology companies, they're obviously going to play a vital role in the future. There'll be shifts, there'll be power plays, and there's a lot of shifts going on right now. But also you have to know that that's what their job is. Like, it's like when they tell us, if we can keep inflation at 3% or 4%, I start laughing hysterically, because we're probably up at around 18.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
And I know that they can't come out there and just flat out say that, A, because of politics, 2, it'll look like they're picking on the current administration, and 3, it'll send panic. But, you have to accept reality for what it is, and take someone like myself or some other kind of newsletter writers that are a bit more doom and gloom, and mix that with the narrative of the government speak that doesn't cause a lot of panic. And somewhere in between there, the reality lies.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. So, I thought that was a fun story. It was an interesting story. It had some traction on Reddit, so I thought it was a good laugh. And my other idea that I'd had was we could talk about the Bank of Canada increasing its interest rates, and I thought that would just be too depressing. So I figured this was a more fun conversation for us to have.
Much more fun, yes. And I mean, that's happening. We can't ignore it. I mean, that's certainly happening. There's lots happening in the crypto space too, with regulations coming in, and there's panic in that. Once again, we've said it right from the beginning that a lot of energy it takes to make a Bitcoin I don't care how you try to spin it. It's just the case. Will it have a place in the future? Sure. I think that a lot of these types of token type things have a place. But at the end of the day, as much as if you're in that space, you're buying an ideology. It's like anything. If you're buying Nike, you're buying a lifestyle. Like you don't need, like, there's nothing expensive about these shoes. They're not, there's no high tech engineering that's going to make you really be a better athlete. I mean, most people aren't even athletes wearing the stuff. They're buying it because it's sending a message. And when you're buying a crypto, you're buying an anarcho-capitalist ideology of, hey, we're going to be free and we're going to be doing this and all that. And I love that. That message sounds amazing, especially when we have such government control trying to take freedoms away. It sounds great, but it's just not realistic, and it's not going to happen. Exactly. It just isn't. I mean, it really isn't. I mean, and not to, once again, we'll keep away from that depression, but you could see what happened even in a little tiny country like Canada if someone tried to go against the narrative, like the truckers going against the narrative, is the entire full force of their media will come down on you fast. And you'll see that whether it's Elon Musk now, who's now hated by every progressive on the planet, whether it's Joe Rogan, who's a far left commentator and liberal who's hated by the left as well. If you go against their narrative and whatnot, you're immediately a pariah, and everything comes out of the woodwork. And
exactly.
And that we just have to deal with that. That's just how the world is right now.
That's just the way it is. And you know, if you follow political commentary closely, people talk about pendulum shifts a lot, and things will swing one way and swing back the other way. And this is just the way that these things work. But it's important to highlight and important to understand and know that, you know, the best thing that you can do is not get caught up in a lot of that. Don't get caught up in the right versus left, you know, guns versus no guns, mask versus no mask argument. Don't, you know, stop letting those things distract you from, you know, opportunities and trying to be successful and growing whatever it is that you're doing.
Yes.
There's my bit of wisdom for the day.
No, I love it. That is the message. And I mean, you know, to take responsibility for oneself, I mean, one should never look towards others really to be in charge of your life and your decisions. I mean, this is the perfect time for people to make their goals and just set forth for them. And even if they don't make it, just go for it. And I think the more that people take control of their given situation themselves and what they can do in a day is a lot better strategy than hoping that one of these weak Western leaders is going to do anything positive. And we're suffering from a massive problem of leadership. And that's going to change. It will change. It definitely will. It has to. And that can't not be reflected in the market. When you have the amount of chaos, the amount of complete economic uncertainty, and the current administration pretending like, oh, this is the best ever, and everybody, even if they don't understand economics, knows it's a complete lie. It just sends a lot of uncertainty and into the market, into just your day-to-day interactions. There's an unsettling feeling, and it's uncomfortable. So until we have actual leadership and more control, we're going to be in that kind of middle space for a while.
Yeah, that's it. That's exactly it. And I couldn't have said it any better myself. So, you know, there's one, I just wanted to give a quick shout out before we wrap up the show here, because I know we had your interview with Kurt from QU Media came out this week. I just wanted to give him a shout out on the great news that they had this week. Their Q1 earnings for 2022 were 5.2 million.
Yeah.
That's up about 5 million from what they were in Q1 of last year. It was about 280,000 in Q1 last year. So that's a big result for them, big numbers. They've also kind of updated their revenue guidance that their Q2 revenue will be an all-time quarterly record for them. So we're looking forward to that. That's really exciting. It's proving the viability of the business that they've built over there, which is awesome and exciting. So I just wanted to give a quick little shout out to them on that as well.
No, I like it. That's one of those companies where the price that is currently out because of overall markets is not reflecting the hard work and the achievements they've had.
Yeah. Exactly. That's so it's a great opportunity there. So I like to plug that one, and I'll let you wrap it up here. But that was my final thoughts on the day there.
No, I think that's it. You know, we're coming into we're confident in the positions that we have and the companies that we like, and everything's pulled back. Something not as poorly as say Fang, but it deserved it. But we're very confident in the companies moving forward, even in this chaotic market. So we feel strong. We feel good. You know, Goliath is going into their drill season, so we're really excited to see, you know, how that comes about as well. Faraday Copper, they're plowing along ahead. There's so much happening. Lithium Bank updated their resource. There's a lot happening. There's a lot to be excited about. And I think when people really laser focus on managements, teams, on projects, and see how that they can have a big effect on community, on the province, on the country, and how it can look in the shaping this world in the future. That's a lot more exciting than these kind of arguments online and these political issues that really we don't really get a say in. It's a lot of theater and it's a lot of distraction and very upsetting for a lot of people as well. So let's have a great Friday, finish off the week, and have a wonderful weekend. Get outside, spend time with family, have some laughs, and start to enjoy. Hopefully, if we start getting some summer here in Vancouver, get some sun. But enjoy your weekend, Austin, and we'll see everyone else soon as well.
Thanks, Andrew. Take care, everyone. We'll chat to you next week.